This year's harvest is bountiful too. I'm grateful that the mountain Grandpa gave us produces such splendid truffles. I gazed at the harvested black truffles and muttered to myself. My dog Max enjoyed the scene alongside me. Now, what should I do with this unexpected bounty? Thinking this, Max and I began to descend the mountain. For now, I plan to find a Western cuisine restaurant and negotiate the sale of these truffles. My name is Mary. I'm 33 years old. Besides farming, I harvest truffles on 5 mountains inherited from my grandfather. I have an older brother, Jim. We lost our parents when I was 25. As we grieved, our beloved grandfather passed away the following year. With our parents gone, my brother and I inherited Grandpa's estate. I got the mountains, and Jim took over Grandpa's real estate business. This was largely influenced by Jim's decisions. During discussions about Grandpa's will, Jim strongly insisted on managing the real estate. I wasn't much interested in the inheritance, so I went along with Jim's wishes. As a result, I ended up with the mountains, and Jim got the real estate. But acquiring the real estate changed Jim. He started to look down on me, letting money talk. After he started earning from the properties, Jim began to live extravagantly. That's when he met his wife Betty. Jim and I were living separately then. I stayed in our family home while Jim rented an apartment. After inheriting, he moved to a high-rise, where he met Betty, his neighbor. They often visited me, belittling me before leaving. They even started taking my vegetables without asking. Hey, still dressing like an old-timer for farming, huh? Jim, sharply dressed in a suit, arrived while I was preparing the field for the next sowing. Betty was with him, as usual. You're so different from Jim. Are you two really siblings? She followed with a condescending remark. What brings you two here today? Just checking if you're still alive and kicking. I don't need your concern. If you have no business, please leave. I didn't enjoy talking to them. If I could avoid them, I'd prefer that. Aren't you going to marry? Oh, right. No one's interested, are they? I'm not particularly interested. I prefer working. Come on, don't say that. It's better to admit you can't find anyone. She's the same age as me, yet she acts superior around my brother. I met Betty's in-laws only once at their wedding. They were polite, unlike her. I wondered if it was her nature or if Jim influenced her. But I knew I didn't want anything to do with them. That's not the case. Think about it from our side. Betty's embarrassed to have a sister-in-law who's still single. She cares about you, so don't be so rejecting. It's shameful for a family member to be single at this age. I wanted to yell and send them away, but I held back, sensing it would only lead to more trouble later. Don't meddle in other people's lives. I recall my brother saying that at his wedding. Betty had never left home before marrying him, and her in-laws seemed troubled by her lack of independence. Since marrying, she's been living with my brother, but the two of them, unable to cook, always rely on delivery or meals from their parents. I guess that must be tough on Tom and his family. Should I introduce you to some guys? No thanks, I don't need your help. I snapped back at my brother, now brimming with confidence since inheriting the estate. I thought they would leave after that, but instead they said, "Fine, but make us something to eat." No way! I refused, of course, but then Betty spoke up. My parents are traveling, so there's no food at home. Mary, please, we're family. Can't you help us out? I was shocked by their audacity, only using others when it suited them. But it didn't end there. Fine, here, my brother said, pulling out his wallet and handing me a $100 bill. Make us a meal with this. I'm buying your cooking. Your mountains are a waste anyway, right? This money is from my real estate. Be grateful. With that, they headed toward my house. A few seconds later, I followed, cleaning up my tools and shaking off the dirt, Max in tow. I wasn't motivated by the money. I just didn't want them running amok in my house. As we entered, Betty commented, "Jim's place is so different. This is small and smells like dirt." Hey, don't say that. Mary, hurry up and make something. Do they even realize they're intruding? Probably not, which is why they act this way. Wanting them to leave soon, I started preparing the meal as requested. While I cooked, they played with Max. Finishing their meal, they started browsing on their mobile phones. "Mary, you're poor, right?" "Excuse me?" "Well, farming doesn't make much, right? And you only inherited useless mountains." It seems my brother had told her everything. "I'm not poor. I have savings and those mountains have I stopped myself. If I revealed they produced truffles, they'd probably want a piece of that too. Caught off guard, I heard, "What about the mountains?" Didn't catch that. I quickly said, "Those mountains are precious gifts from Grandpa." Their disdain was clear as they sighed. Then Betty said to me, "Don't you dare show up at family events, you poor old woman." I was stunned, speechless. Slowly regaining my composure, I retorted, "Old woman? I'm the same age as you." She continued, "You don't look it. Straw hat, towel around your neck, muddy clothes. You're just an old woman working in the fields." "Betty, that's enough." My brother chided her, though he didn't seem too bothered. As I stood there, somewhat dazed, my brother continued, "Actually, Betty's brother is getting married. There are other events too, so we'd rather not have someone as poor as you involved." Sorry, Betty, didn't express it well. His apology was no consolation, just another way to look down on me. Why do I have to endure this? I was more saddened than angered by their attitude. Is it because I own this mountain that I have to hear such unfairness? My brother started treating me like a lesser being after the inheritance. Would we have remained normal siblings if we hadn't inherited Grandpa's estate? That thought crossed my mind. "So that's it. Is that okay with you, Mary?" And she, Betty, nonchalantly came to hurt me. Her thoughtless words must have wounded others too, but I stopped thinking about it. Arguing here was pointless. "Then, let's cut ties," I told them both. Initially shocked, they finally said, "Well, if you say so." "It's better for peace. No interference. That's best for both of us," they responded. Then they left my house, not realizing this incident would soon backfire on them. After they left, I started shipping the truffles I had stored. Several buyers were interested, and the price was satisfactory. Maybe I can make a living just from truffles. Honestly, when I first inherited the mountains, it was a hassle. But one day while walking, Max suddenly ran off and kept barking at one spot. Curious, I checked it out and found truffles. Since then, my mountains turned out to be an excellent environment for truffles. Maybe I should share some with my relatives? I began packaging some truffles separately as gifts for them, aside from those destined for restaurants. A week later, things took a dramatic turn. The home phone rang, and then my mobile phone. I decided to answer the home phone first. It was Tom. "Thank you for the truffles, Mary. It's amazing they come from the mountains you inherited. Those two seem to be in trouble, but it's good to see you living well." Tom thanked me and updated me on recent events, which were quite surprising. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." I politely thanked him and hung up. Checking my mobile phone, there were 5 missed calls from my brother. He didn't answer when I called back. Then, 5 minutes later, as Max began barking, a pale-faced Jim and Betty entered. "What's this all about?" Startled, I asked, but Jim blurted out without hesitation, "Please, help us." Having just spoken with Tom, I had an idea of what happened. "You found a flaw in your property, and fixing it is costly. All the tenants left, right?" "How did you know?" My brother had inherited the management of 3 apartments from our grandfather, but they were all bought when Grandpa was 60 years old. Naturally, they were quite old. 2 apartments had an occupancy rate of only 50%, but the 3rd, being near the station, was fully occupied. However, a significant crack was found in the walls of that apartment. Consequently, due to this damage and general wear and tear, the tenants left en masse. This meant a significant loss of income for my brother. I heard it all from Tom, and that Betty has gotten into debt. I said, surprising her, "You wanted a bag while shopping, didn't have the money, and impulsively borrowed from a loan shark, right? $6,000, wasn't it? And just then, the apartment issue came up, right?" Her previous arrogance gone, she just nodded quietly. "Don't you have savings, brother? You don't need to ask me for help." I had intended to cut ties with them. I didn't want to get involved, nor did I want any further dealings with them. Yet they had the audacity to break that vow. But now that they were here, I was at a loss. Well, I haven't told you, but I quit my job a while ago, after the real estate started bringing in money. I thought my savings were enough. Brother, I can't believe it. You worked at one of New York's top companies, right? I was astonished. He had been working in sales at a major electronics manufacturer with a decent salary. But he had quit without hesitation, blinded by the immediate gains. What about Betty's debt? I can't pay it. Then sell the bag you bought. When I suggested this, her face fell even more. It was stolen. I left it on a park bench for a moment. I couldn't help but laugh. Immediately, my brother scolded me. "How can you laugh? Betty is suffering." Well, it's just one misfortune after another. And weren't we supposed to have cut ties? That's temporarily void. What a self-serving argument. I was appalled by their audacity. "Please, lend us some money." No. I firmly rejected her plea. "Then ask your in-laws for help." Before I could finish, my brother interrupted. "Tom and his family are furious about this. They won't help us." "So, you thought I would help you after we cut ties? Isn't that a bit too convenient?" As I said this, my brother seemed to reach his limit and exploded. "Why don't you share the truffles from Grandpa's mountain with us?" "Oh, you knew about that?" "Of course." Apparently some relative had told them. I had given truffles to both my parents' relatives and my in-laws. It wasn't surprising that the information leaked. Betty chimed in. "That's so mean. Why would I give anything to people I've cut ties with?" When I made my point, Betty and the others were at a loss for words. "We said no interference. That's best for both of us." "Betty, you said that, right?" "Yes, but..." Betty responded weakly. My brother, too, looked unsure how to defend her. "Why not look for a job? You're really going to abandon your own family?" I'm not ashamed. You're not? The most shameful thing is how my brother has changed for the worse since the inheritance. It's embarrassing, as his sister. Your parents and I get along well. How do you think I should face them now? My brother grimaced and fell silent. Of course he would. Despite their closer relation to the in-laws, they refused to help them, while those in-laws were friendly with me. The complexity of emotions was evident. In living in adjacent high-rise apartments, falling this low must be even more embarrassing, right? We'll just take and sell truffles from your mountain. My brother resorting to drastic measures. But I coldly responded, That's theft. The ownership of this mountain is legally mine. You pushed it onto me. If you do anything without my permission, I'll report it as theft. What should I do then? Jim. He seemed to give up, lost for words. You're obsessed with status. Why not live within your means? You have a background in a major company. Then my brother said weakly, I'm going to leave Betty. What are you talking about all of a sudden? Well, it's obvious. Your debt is ruining our future. I'd rather be with my sister than you. What? He seemed desperate, even saying something so extreme. I was shocked. Is this what marriage is? You once bragged about it to me. If it leads to an end like yours, I'd hate it. What did you say? That's terrible. If you're going to leave so easily, you shouldn't have married. And don't use me as an excuse to run away. Be responsible for your words. I want nothing to do with you in the future. They had no response. The sudden marital dispute quieted down. Why did I? If only I knew about the truffles, I'd have chosen the mountain, not those old apartments. My brother lamented, collapsing. Seeing him, Betty began to cry, helpless. They left my house in a pitiable state. However, bad luck continues for an interesting amount of time. My brother, who valued status, drove a luxury sports car. But on the way back, he crashed into a wall on a sharp curve, shaken. Though he survived, the car was totaled. And he had forgotten to update his insurance, so he lost the car. Their lives turned dark. I heard from the in-laws that they didn't divorce but were only a couple in name, moving to a nearby apartment. They sold the inherited property cheaply. My brother had fallen completely. As for me, I expanded into a business using the mountain. I invested my savings and established a campsite, which quickly filled with reservations. My income increased tenfold. My farm, already known for truffles, became famous, and I got more contracts. It seems sharing truffles with relatives who had connections with cooperatives and restaurants paid off. Someone told me about you, they'd say on the phone. My brother, blinded by immediate gains, hit rock bottom, while I, through steady efforts, thrived. Now, I even have someone considering engagement. I plan to live my life at my own pace, steadily moving forward.